Good afternoon, I'm Jasmine Trapnell.
And I'm Lennox.
Welcome to the Scrumdown, where we break down rugby's top talking points and preview this weekend's Men's Six Nations games. We have a jam-packed show ahead with special guests where we cover the latest breaking news and hottest debates, from Smith versus Smith to the consequences of Warren Gatland's resignation.
It's an exciting weekend ahead of fixtures, with Wales versus Ireland tomorrow, followed by the most anticipated match of the weekend as England host Scotland in the Calcutta Cup. Then on Sunday, we head to the mainland where Italy hosts France in Rome. England enter this weekend after a shock victory over Fabien Galtier's France. It was a victory that went down to the wire as Finn Smith slotted the necessary conversion to put the home side ahead with 30 seconds on the clock. Meanwhile, Gregor Townsend will be looking to extend Scotland's already record-breaking 4-game winning streak against their biggest rival. But with a depleted side through injury, it won't be smooth sailing for the Scots.
England hosts Scotland at Twickenham at 4:45 on Saturday. To discuss this upcoming game, we're joined by rugby analyst and player Dan Robertshaw. So Dan, how do you think England will be feeling going into their match this weekend?
Well, I think coming into this match there'll be a huge amount of anticipation for England. You know, not just because of the pressure from the media. They'll really see it as an opportunity to spark a resurgence and not just have the victory last week as a one-off.
And so, obviously, there's so many different things that are happening this weekend, but one of the things that stay the same is the team sheet, with not many changes happening. What do you make of the decision to retain the Finn Smith at fly half decision?
For me, Alex, it's the right decision. I think Finn Smith showed composure and class last week. If you look at the stats, he's been faring much better in the 10 jersey. Granted, he's had less minutes, but he comes out on top over Marcus Smith in terms of passes, try assists, line break assists and tackles completed. Obviously the crucial stat there is Marcus Smith has played more minutes, so is more experienced in that role, but I think Finn Smith has stepped up and he's shown he can do it at test level. Marcus's raw ability can't denied and he'll be a catalyst of much of England's attack, but all eyes will be on Finn Smith's attacking ability as well.
So the only change that we have seen to the team sheet for this weekend is that Ollie Chessum's coming in at number 5, replacing George Martin. How do you think that will impact the game from having a winning team?
I think it's really exciting to see Ollie Chessum come in. I think he's definitely a fan favourite. He carries with physicality on the ball. He shored up the line out last week and he'll be looking to do the same again this week. And he's a real leader within the team. I was listening to an interview with Steve Borthwick this week and he was saying that Ollie Chessum was identified as a young leader at Leicester Tigers from when he was 15 years old at the academy. They saw a lot of leadership potential in him. So I think he's a massive addition to the squad and he'll be a hell of a performer this weekend.
And so then speaking about leadership, obviously it's only been a few games in the role, but what do you make of Mario Itoje as captain for England?
I think he's only had a couple of games at the helm, so I think it's hard to judge really, but I think England are in a safe pair of hands, to be honest. I think potentially more was made of the fact, too much was made of the fact that he was handed the captaincy over Jamie George. I think it was time for England to have a leader who is going to stay on the pitch for 80 minutes, and Itoje he's an established leader in the squad. He's respected by each member of the team. He gets through a huge amount of work. He's got heaps of experience, and he's just a calming, exciting presence for the team.
And looking at the overall England squad, how do you think their confidence will be after their recent win against France?
I think they'll be confident. There'll be areas that they need to tidy up, like handling and their defence, but I think they look to have regained some of that sort of attacking flair and that attacking identity that Borthwick will be looking for. They showed they can do that against France last week, and they showed that they can pivot a little bit when their game plan might not be going quite as well as they'd hoped. They're able to, or at least last week, they were able to revert to a plan B and kind of find other ways through the defence. So I think they'll take confidence from that going into this weekend. Yeah.
And so then moving on to Scotland, you've got the fact that there's so many changes within their squad, but luckily they've got the return of their captain, Russell, after his concussion last week, or supposed concussion last week. What do you think his return will do to help the squad?
I think it's massively exciting for everybody involved. As we all know, he was cleared of his head injury assessment on the day, but Scotland, rightly so, didn't let him back on the pitch because they didn't feel that everything was okay with him. So props to them for keeping him off in that scenario. I think everybody, bar the English players, will be glad to see him back on the team sheet. He's just a hell of a player. Got bags of attacking flair, and he tends to thrive in these big games. So I think he'll be integral to Scotland's performance, and will cause constant problems for the English defence.
And so another key player for Scotland is obviously Van der Merwe. He got a hat-trick of tries last year and he's had some phenomenal games against England. What do you think it is that England need to do to try and put a stop to his force?
Yeah, like you said, I think he's a huge threat really. He's cut England to ribbons in recent years, and I think he'll be looking to do the same again. Well, Borthwick said in the week that they are very much alert to the attacking threat he poses, and they're going to have to give him, take away any space that he might have, not give him an inch. Tommy Freeman will have his work cut out for him on that right channel, so it will be a very exciting matchup, and we'll see if he's able to repeat his previous feats.
So then quickly, who do you think? Do you think England have what it takes to hold off Scotland?
Well, I might be a bit biased here. I think they will just about hold on. I think it's a bit of a revived and reformed English side at Allianz Stadium, with 82,000 fans there who, as much as the players will be hoping to see a win, I think it's probably England's time.
Thanks, Dan.
Right.
And so moving swiftly on, also on Saturday, we see Ireland head to the Principality to face the struggling Welsh side, with a new head coach, Matt Sherratt, making significant changes to the squad, and Ireland facing some injury troubles. With Ireland facing some injury troubles, our Ireland correspondent Conor joins us to discuss potential outcomes for the match. So Conor, obviously, one of the biggest headlines for this week is the fact that Warren Gatland was removed from his position as Wales captain, head coach. What do you make of that decision?
I think, it was a long time coming, to be honest. We talked about Wales losing 14 on the trot. They haven't won since November 2023 in the World Cup. I think this is what most Welsh fans would have wanted. I think it's best for both parties, to be fair. I think the only controversy is the fact that it was midway through a tournament, and you don't usually see that, and you just think about sometimes what knock-on effect that could have. But yeah.
And so obviously Matt Sherratt has stepped in as interim. How do you think his impact on the squad is going to affect the game this weekend?
Well, obviously we've seen his lineup now. He's made significant changes in the forwards, in the pack. It looks like what he's trying to do is wear Ireland down physically, because they're not going to out-tactic them, they're not going to outplay them. So it looks like he's trying to wear them down physically, ensure that they don't recycle the ball to the wings, use their pace.
Awesome. And so then what do you think success will look like for this Welsh side? Obviously, Ireland is such a strong squad, but what do you think success will look like? It's not going to be a win, so what will it be?
It's just going out there and putting in a performance. You've got guys who haven't been in the squad for a long time coming in. They just need to make a good account of themselves. They can't let themselves get run over by Ireland, because they have in previous years. I think it's just making a good showing of themselves and not letting themselves be humiliated as they have done in previous fixtures.
And you mentioned that Matt's brought in some more players that haven't been in the squad recently, but he's brought in quite a few senior players that have got a lot of experience compared to the quite young team that Gatland have gone for. How do you think that will bring a sense of sort of unpredictability to the game as well?
I think what you've seen with Wales when they've played well, they've had that blend of youth and experience. You take the example of like Alan Wynne-Jones, for example, and then when George North came in the team, that's a perfect sort of example of seniority and youth. I think the senior players understand what it is to play for the national team. I think the younger players, when they're not putting the work in, it's obvious there needs to be change. There needs to be leadership with Wales, because we haven't seen that. So I think it was smart of Sherratt to do that, but we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out.
And so then on the flip side, you've got Ireland having some quite big injury issues, in particular with the fact that they're missing their captain, Caelan Doris. What do you think of the changes that Simon Easterby has made to this fixture this weekend?
I think this might be a problem as well, but I think what he might be doing is keeping one eye on games ahead. You've got the French game, which is arguably Ireland's toughest fixture. It could be pivotal to the sort of trajectory of the rest of this tournament. I think players needed rested as well, because Ireland, they've picked up some injuries. We've seen Hansen getting injured. Sheehan's just come back from injury. Furlong picked up an injury before the tournament. So I think he's being cautious, but I think he's also not trying to go all in against Wales, because he knows he's got 2 games left.
And obviously, everyone knows that this is a really strong Irish side, but the side itself, what do you think they'll be looking for in this game? Everyone thinks they're going to win. Everyone's got quite a lot of confidence that they're going to do well, but what will they be looking for to sort of learn from or improve against Wales?
I think, to be honest, so we saw the games against England and Scotland. They played well, attacking wise. You know, they did concede some sloppy tries, and I mean, if Wales put their foot on the gas, who knows what they can do. I think again Ireland have been very consistent, defensive wise as well. You know, they've been excellent, but they can't just use that or think that and be arrogant and think they're going to turn Wales over. Yeah, I just think they have to be switched on, play their usual game, and they should pick up the win.
And so they have been so solid this Six Nations tournament so far. Do you think this is the best Irish squad? Is this the best Six Nations squad we have seen? Could they take the three-peat?
I think the three-peat, they're nailed on to do that. They'd be bookies' favourites. I think if you ask fans of all 6 different nations, they would probably say that it will be Ireland's to lose. I think in terms of being the best in Six Nations history, it's a hard debate, because we think of some of the teams we've seen down the line, you know, French teams, English teams, Welsh teams. They've also been excellent. Winning a three-peat doesn't make you necessarily the best, but I think in terms of the players that they have and the consistency of their performances, I think it would be hard to rule them out of that debate.
And so do you think there's any chance that this weekend, with all the changes that have been made within Wales, that they could be caught off guard, in particular with all their injury struggles?
I think it's potentially they could get caught off guard, but I think it would be a long shot to think that they're going to struggle. Stranger things have happened, but Ireland, as I said, have had a fantastic record against Wales. We'll just have to see, to be honest, because it's also that idea that with some change, with a new coach, you can have a bit of a bounce. But I think Easterby will know that as well. He won't be arrogant to the fact that Wales are a work in progress and that they are trying to reset.
Thank you for that, Conor. We are now joined by our European rugby consultant, Harry Crichton, to discuss what France will be taking to Rome to face a resurgent Italy. So, Harry, how do you think the two teams will be feeling coming into this weekend?
Well, I mean, it's such an enticing game, this one. I think there's so many good storylines to kind of look out for. Obviously, Italy are coming into it with a huge amount of confidence. They're coming off the back of a great win against Wales, where they really bossed it. And going into that, it was all the sort of narrative was all about, are Italy going to really consolidate their place as basically not being the worst team in the Six Nations anymore? And they certainly did that. Their confidence is going to be really, really sky high. And I think that for a long time now, people have spoken about, when are we going to start to see Italy improve? When are we going to start seeing them compete? And we're now at that stage where, we've got an Italy side that nobody is going to be going into a game against them thinking it's kind of walk in the park. So we're going for their third consecutive win in the Six Nations, which is unprecedented for them. They've never done that, and that is huge motivation for them. But actually, when you look at their form is really strong in the competition. So in their last 5 games, including last year's tournament, they've only actually lost 1 game. So Italy now are a really strong side, and I think that for them, they just need to look at what happened last year. I mean, last year's game between France and Italy was one of the games of the tournament. It was an absolute blockbuster. So just if we sort of take ourselves back to the Stade de France. 82 minutes on the clock, Garbisi taking a penalty to potentially win the game with the score at 13-0, and he steps back and everyone's watching, and then the wind just blows the ball off, and he has to go up and he has to put it back on. He's got like 5 seconds, he takes the shot and he hits the post. I mean, I was absolutely gutted for them, and I just think that this year they just have to take confidence from that. Like, they can perform against this France side. That was in France this year. It's in the Stadio Olimpico in Italy. I think Italy are going to be so full of confidence here, and they're going to really want to prove that was not that wasn't a fluke, that game. That wasn't just a random kind of flash in the pan. For France, I guess similar to Italy, they'll be looking to right the wrongs of last year. That was almost an embarrassing result for them last year. So this year they're going to want to make sure that they really press home their dominance against Italy, and they show who's boss, I suppose. But they're coming into this after fumbling big time against England. England were great last week, or the weekend before last, but France had chances that the game should have been over at half time really, and so really uncharacteristic for Gautier's France to sort of drop chances, even seeing Dupont sort of fumble chances. It's fascinating. It's going to be a great game. I'm really looking forward to it.
And so then on that, obviously France have been quite dominant in previous performances, but do you think that this could be a potential whitewash for Italy, or do you think there's some standout players who could perhaps seal them a win?
Yeah. No, I think with Italy, one of the reasons why all of a sudden they're a side that we kind of really want to be involved in the Six Nations is because they've got some standout players now that even the very best teams are going to think, well, we need to be careful here, because Italy, they're going to pose a threat against anyone, particularly if you look at the players in their sort of like in the backs, the midfield. Capelozzo at 15 is proper electric. He is super good to watch, really fast, great finisher, real competitor, and he's got that kind of X factor for Italy. Anyone playing them is going to be, they need a plan for him basically. How are you going to stop him? But it's not just him. They've obviously got Garbisi at 10, and he was the difference against Wales. In a game that really lacked quality, he was the one who kind of stood up and sort of made something of that game. And you saw those two linking up for that first try against Wales, the only try against Wales, and it was brilliant to watch. And so I think those two in particular, but also you've got Allen with the kicking. He's a really reliable sort of kicking at goal now. So you're just seeing these players that now all of a sudden are making Italy a threat to other sides and other teams. And nobody in previous years, we've always thought, well, Italy, it's just a question of how big's the score going to be? Like, how quickly can you get the bonus point try on the scoreboard? But now I'm not so sure, and I think that they've got some players that will hurt France given the chance.
And what exactly is it, do you think, that Italy need to be doing going into this game to sort of take that win and sort of seal that?
France obviously are just, if they turn up, they're going to be really hard to stop, and I think they're going to need to be bang up for it. They're going to need to compete at the breakdown, and obviously they're going to have to find a way to stop Antoine Dupont from running the show, basically, which is the same challenge everyone has when they play against France. Italy will have to, it will have to be the performance of a lifetime for those players. I'm here bigging them up, and let's not get this twisted. France are strong favourites for this game, and rightfully so. Italy will have to play the perfect game, and I'm not saying that's out of the question. I think they can, but those individuals that I mentioned there will have to really show up, and they'll need a bit of luck, I imagine, just like how England had at Twickenham. They're going to need luck if they're going to stop France.
And so obviously, as you just said, France entered this tournament as seemingly the only team able to stop Italy, Ireland being the ones to take the three-peat. What do you feel like went wrong last weekend against England that meant they didn't get that win?
It was handling errors, really. You saw Dupont shell one early in the first half that he was in, and the ball was passed out to him, he dropped it. And similarly in the second half as well. I can't actually remember exactly who now, but there was another chance in the sort of bottom left corner at Twickenham, and handling errors cost them there too. I think they'll need to obviously rule those out and avoid any of those kind of issues. I suppose for France, the other thing they'll be disappointed about was the fact that they were leading against England late on, and they let England sort of won the penalty to let them kick to touch and create that try scoring chance at the end. So they'll want to make sure that I'll be really excited if we've got a finish like that at the weekend against Italy. But if there is, they're going to want to make sure that they're on the winning side of it this time. Obviously, they'll look to Dupont again as their sort of talisman, and I can't wait to watch him.
Yeah, you've mentioned Dupont a few times, but last year he was on his stint with the Sevens because he was playing for the Olympics. How do you think that has impacted his game, and How do you think that'll impact him specifically this weekend?
I mean, I think it's made him a better player, and I think that we're talking about a guy that was good at everything and has gotten better at everything, basically. And I really do think that, you know, we're going to be later down the line in years to come. We'll be talking about Dupont as one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And I think that, you know, I've seen Sean Edwards, obviously the France defence coach, talking about how he really encouraged him to go and obviously he had the opportunity to win a gold medal at the Olympics, which is only something that great athletes do. But I think just for his actual game as well, it's really sort of helped improve him. And it's kind of almost a bit of when you've got a guy who's so good at everything, you have to sort of think out the box about how you can make him better. But the stats back it up. So, you know, we've got some stats here. If we look at his current performance compared to 2023 February, and this includes his performances for Toulon and for France, he makes double the number of turnovers. He makes more dominant tackles, so those tackles where he makes the tackle and drives the opposition player back. He commits more defenders. He's involved in more tries. You know, he wins more one-on-one duels. Pretty much every aspect of his game statistically has improved. But you see it just in moments as well. Like when you look at the game against England, for example, France's third try, the one that actually gave them the lead late on, it comes from Dupont picking the ball up late, and he's under a huge amount of pressure. And you know, there's England bodies flying towards him deep in his own half, and you just think that he's showing the mindset of a sevens player. He doesn't think to kick. He holds on to it. He thinks. He looks around. He's comfortable running away from the try line and still making a pass that basically cut England open completely and led to the France try. And I just think like all of those things are the sort of plays you see in a sevens player. Really, you know, they're things that he will have learned from playing sevens. His fitness will have improved. You know, the ability for him to turn over and sort of go into one-on-one duels like you have to do on a sevens pitch. It's all just made him a better player, and I think that, you know, it's just a joy to watch him, really.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Harry. That's made me so much more excited for this weekend's match, and I'm sure it's going to be a great one, as you said, like last year. It's certainly looking like it's going to be an interesting weekend with a lot at stake for many of the teams involved. Ireland looked almost certain to extend their lead at the top and get one step closer to achieving an unprecedented three-peat. Both England and France trail by 4 points as they aim to climb the table. Scotland sit in fourth as they continue their campaign to achieve a higher than third for the first time in the history's format. Italy sit 3 points clear of Wales, but with a new head coach and a revamped squad, the Dragons will be looking to reduce that gap. And now to look at the consequences for the tournament for the rest of the season, as we look to see who and who may not have taken their spot in the Lions squad, which will be taking place in Australia this summer. So Dan, obviously there's so much at stake with this tournament. Who do you think has sealed their place as a Lion this summer?
Well, for me, Alex, it's got to be Tom Curry. I think there was doubts cast over his international sort of pedigree and experience for a while, but I think he's shown in recent games he is a serious operator at the breakdown. He's a constant carry threat, and the amount of tackles he gets through in the game is frankly ridiculous. So I think he's got to go on tour. Whether or not he starts in what is a very competitive back row, I don't know, but he's at least in the conversation, and I think he'll be terrific for the Lions once again.
And how about you, Conor?
My shout was Finlay Bealham, actually, number 3. I think he's the last couple of campaigns, I think he's displayed tremendous form for Ireland. I mean, he's traditionally an understudy for Furlong, right? But he's the first 2 games there, especially against England, he really stepped up, showed his physicality, and that's what Ireland have, in the forward rows. So yeah, I think whether he plays in the first 15, maybe not, but I think he definitely deserves a place in the squad.
And then Harry?
I think it's interesting because obviously lots of the Irish team are sort of nailed on to play you'd expect, and I think the England Scotland game is fascinating. There's so many interesting kind of matchups, and I think that's where we might see some players really sort of stake their claim. I'd love to see a couple of players in an England shirt this weekend, you know, really make a statement. I'd love to see Ellis Genge have an incredible game. I mean, I love him for his kind of his leadership, his physicality, the way he plays with the bit between his teeth. He just loves it, and I love him for that. Good on Genge. I really just think he's the kind of guy that he offers something a little bit different to some of the other players. Like, you know, obviously like the Irish front row is exceptional, and they're great players. But it's just the way Genge plays on the edge, and just it's almost like if you can whip up that storm within him, he's a sort of a bit of a different entity really, and I love him for that, and I think he's a bit of a maverick and a great player. So I think he's had a great Six Nations so far. I think he's really matured over the last couple of years as a player. You know, he's really sort of bedded into that role as sort of part of the leadership team in the England camp. And I'd love him for this. I'd love for him for this weekend to just have an incredible game. And you know, he's my kind of sort of like, if I could pick someone who I think might disrupt the status quo of like the Irish pack, I'd be going for Genge. He'd be my man. But I think there's loads of interesting kind of matchups in that Scotland game. I think there's just so many players to have your eye on.
100%. I bet Andy Farrell will be looking and trying to find the best players for that team at that point. And so then finally, just to sort of summarise, what do you think will be the outcomes of the match this weekend? Dan?
All three?
Yeah.
I think England will take it by 7 at home. I think the Ireland game will be quite heavily in favour of the Irish. I'd say they'll take it by 20. And the France game will go the way of the French.
Conor?
Yeah, similar to Dan actually. I think the England-Scotland game, I think that sort of set up to be the tightest. I think we've seen, you know, the previous times they played, even though England have lost, they have been tight, and it's gone down to the wire. So I think England will scrape past Scotland, is what I'm thinking right now. In terms of the Irish game, obviously I'd have a bit of bias. I want to say we're going to smash Wales, but I don't think that will be the case. I think Wales will turn up. Wales will turn up and they'll put in a performance, but again, just with the quality the Irish possess, I can't see anything past 20 point deficit, similar to what Dan said. And then France and Italy on Sunday, I think you just got to go with the French. I don't think you can see too far past that. So yeah.
Finally.
England to beat Scotland. I can't see Scotland winning for a fifth time in a row against England. And I do think, I mean honestly, I hope I'm not wrong here, but I do think England will have turned a bit of a corner after that France game. I really think that was just, they needed to get a win in a game like that, a tight game against a real top side, and they got it against France. And now they've got to beat Scotland, or they're just back to square one really. So I'm gonna go for England. Obviously, like, you know, Ireland have been getting lucky for weeks now, so I think no, Ireland I think will have too much for Wales. But you know, for rugby's sake, I hope Wales improve, and I hope that they sort of show a bit of fight. I'm sure they will. You know, and make things interesting. I'll go for Italy to get a surprise win against the French. Yeah, I'll mix things up, and I'll go for the Italians to get a historic win at Stadio Olimpico. So yeah, England, Ireland, and I'll go for Italy.
Perfect. Great.
Well, it is a make or break weekend for several of the nations off the back of a fallow week, where they'll hopefully be refreshed, ready for the second half of the tournament. But this weekend does also mark a month until the Women's Six Nations commences, with Ireland versus France kicking off the tournament in an important year for the women's game. That's all for today's show of the Scrumdown. Thank you all for joining us. Bye.